If you guys are into shooting the copper bullets, man, I got a great deal for you. We have partnered with Barnes Bullets. They are world famous, known for that VOR-TX rifle, the deadliest, most accurate hunting loads on the planet. I like this company, guys, because I have a personal connection to these guys. Down in central Utah, my dad's got this ranch, and on the way to the ranch, you drive past this Barnes Bullets factory, and it's a really cool building just kind of out in the middle of nowhere. So I know them well. These all-copper bullets provide destructive power, double diameter expansion, maximum weight retention, and devastating energy transfer, all with excellent accuracy. It's a great choice for Western big game hunters and shooters everywhere. So check them out at barnesbullets.com and let me know what you guys think. I appreciate it. You've heard my Silencer Central ads, I'm sure, and I don't know if you have reached out and contacted them yet. If you're interested in a silencer, though, man, this is the way to go. Silencer Central from the start to finish, because it's quite the process. If you've never gotten a suppressor for one of your rifles, you've got to go through and do the ATF paperwork and the background checks and all that kind of stuff. But the cool part is Silencer Central takes care of it all. It's a several-month process, and so what's cool about it is if you don't want to drop all that money right at the top end of this whole process, you can just get a hold of them, and you can do like a payment plan while they're taking care of all the paperwork on the back end. I have the Banish 30, and this thing is awesome. I've never used one of these before, so I'm like learning as I go along. But what I was getting at is from start to finish, Silencer Central has been some of the most amazing people I've ever worked with through the process. They treated me like I was family, and I really appreciated it. You guys should check them out, and you can call them at 866-891-4494 or check it out at silencercentral.com. It will be worth your time, I promise. All right, guys, I got a good one this week. Get ready, buckle up, and listen in. Here we go. There exists a threat from anti-hunting groups to politicians trying to give our land away, and we won't stand for it. Those vast western landscapes provide the space for our wildlife to thrive and a place for hunters and anglers to fuel the fire that sparks their soul. In this show, we share our love of hunting, fishing, and conservation. Here, we provide the foundation to meet these threats through passion and the grit of the American outdoorsman. Welcome to the Western Huntsman Podcast. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this episode of the Western Huntsman Podcast. This is Jim Huntsman, your host, coming at you from the Broken Tine studio and brought to you by Eastman's Hunting Journals. Glad you guys are tuning in, and we are really glad to be here. It has been an interesting week so far, and it's only Monday, so it looks like we might get an early winter up here in North Idaho, Western Montana, and so we've been dealing with that. And my guest this week had to deal with some issues around the storm coming in. So, anyways, I've got somebody I've been following on Instagram for a long time, and it's always been, just one of those super entertaining, Instagram pages or whatever that has between photography and hunting and the outdoors and different things that he does. It's like anybody I say that wants to come on this show, the requirement is only, you're an interesting person that I'd love to have a conversation with. And so I'm just meeting him for the first time, and his name is John Law. And his Instagram handle is at the Last Wyomingite, which I love. And glad you're here, man. I appreciate you coming on the show, and welcome.
Hey, thanks, Jim. I really appreciate having the chance to come on. I've been a longtime fan of your show, and I feel like I know you, and I've been looking forward to this opportunity to sit down and visit for a long time.
Awesome, man. I love hearing that kind of stuff. It's really cool. That's what I like. As I talk a lot of. I have a lot of negative things to say about social media, but there are a lot of positive things, and one of them is, like, without social media, I would never meet cool dudes like you. and it's just it's a good way to stay connected and build new connections and friendships if you go about it right. And that's again, one of the positive things that comes out of it. So yeah, man. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say I couldn't agree more, Jim, that before I started my Instagram page, I wasn't really on social media, and I have just been overwhelmed by the number of new friends that I've made and how much information I've learned just by being engaged through that platform.
Yeah. Yeah. No, for sure. It's been like, I have no idea what I'm doing with the Instagram thing, because it's always funny. People are like, I'll reach out to somebody and some big name person. I'll be like, hey, you want to come on my podcast? And they'll be like, you don't have enough Instagram followers. And I'm like, I don't even know what that means, but it does not reflect the audience size. So whatever, jerk.
No.
But
Yeah.
what do you do? So I didn't lose you, did I?
No, I'm still
Okay.
here.
I got to keep checking because that storm's still brewing pretty bad out there. So if I lose phone service, and if for some reason, just between you and I, if this call drops, it's the storm's fault. I promise I didn't just hang up on you, but I'll give it a minute and I'll call you back.
Okay.
I'm curious about your Instagram handle itself, the Last Wyomingite. What do you mean by that?
Oh boy, that's a really good question. It's actually one that it comes up from time to time. I think, unfortunately, some people probably take it the wrong way in thinking that I may be out to outlast everyone in the state or something. And that's not it at all. When I came up with that, I thought, well, one, it's catchy, that it's recognizable. Mm-hmm. And two, that I felt like through my childhood and adult life, I've seen so many wild places become less wild over time. And I have feared that some of the things I'm seeing and sharing on Instagram might be the last chance for some people to see. And maybe that's not the case. And I can think of lots of positive examples of places where Wyoming's wild places are improving. But it's just a reminder of what we have to lose, and of sort of a lifestyle of pastimes.
Yeah, that's interesting you say it like that, because I've always, we lived in, my wife and I, we've lived in North Idaho for 20 some odd years. Before that, I grew up in Utah, and kind of sandwiched in between there. I was stationed out in North Carolina with the military, right? And so, but it's Utah and North Idaho, the differences and the changes that have taken place. And I still feel like I'm about to turn 43. I'm about to turn 43 in like a week and a half. And so I still, which, by the way, when I was a kid, 43 was like old as all get out, man. But I feel like a young man still. You know what I mean? And so the changes that have rapidly taken place in both Utah and like my area of North Idaho, like Coeur d'Alene, Idaho is nothing like it was 15 years ago. I mean, even 7, 8, 9 years ago, the vast changes, the development, the land that was huntable that no longer is mind-blowing. And now I'm in western Montana. I feel like I'm in an area of Montana where, like, because it's just kind of off the beaten path, there's not a lot of growth taking place. But I saw Utah go from what it was when I was a kid to now it's just like, if you drive through Utah from Ogden through Spanish Fork, I mean, it's just continuous developed areas, there's no breaks. Now, Wyoming is an interesting case because Wyoming is the least populated of the lower 48, and I don't know what growth has been like. I know Sheridan has blown up. I know Cody has blown up, and I'm sure Cheyenne. I've driven through Cheyenne many times in my life, and I don't really I've never really spent much time. Where are you at?
I'm in Lander, kind of right in the middle of the state, Foothills of the winds.
Heck yeah,
It's
man.
the population of Wyoming is interesting because it has hardly grown in my lifetime, and if anything, it's maybe shrunk a little bit.
Yeah.
But what is happening here, and that's happening everywhere, is urbanization. Right,
Hmm.
the the little towns, the 50-person towns on the highways are shrinking away, and towns like Lander and Powell and Cody are continuing to grow, and
Yeah.
so it's kind of a shift in population. And what I've seen around Lander just since I've been here is the growth of subdivisions, right?
Hmm.
um, these blocks that were family farms and ranches that have now been subdivided into 5-acre plots. And so, at the very least, the corridor to a lot of the wild places we hunt around here are lined with houses that weren't there 15 years ago. And
That's interesting. Yeah, and Pinedale's like that too. My wife and I
yeah,
almost moved to Pinedale. This was years ago. I was going to buy this company in Pinedale, and we were looking, and that was the process back. Gosh, what year was this? Like 2008, 2009ish, and it was right when the market crashed, and that's actually what stopped me from buying this company. Um, the uh, the town of Pinedale. I've been going there for a long time. But it had changed a lot when we were looking there, and I was worried about where they were building. And I'm not an expert on Pinedale, but I was worried about some of the subdivisions they were building. It seemed like it was really cutting off some muley corridor migration patterns because of just the way the landscape is there. And I could be totally off base, but that was just something that a guy that knows just enough to be dangerous about wildlife habitat and biology and things like that, that it was a bit concerning, but it seems to not be a huge problem so far in that neck of the woods. But I don't know. I don't keep up with that kind of stuff in that detail. So you grew up in Wyoming?
I did. I've lived in Wyoming my whole life now.
Did you grow up in Lander, or how'd you grow up?
No, I guess to give you the sort of the elevator version, I was born in southeast Wyoming. My folks are from western Nebraska and are big bird hunters, and they had me in southeast Wyoming and moved to Thermopolis shortly thereafter. I went to school and graduated high school in Thermopolis, and
Hey,
so
I got to cut in there. I got a speeding ticket in Thermopolis one time.
oh no.
Yeah, that's my history with it. I got pulled over right out of town, and then I followed the cop into town, and he let me pay the fine right there, so I didn't have to come back for court.
Well, that's convenient.
Anyways, so you went to school in Thermopolis, huh?
Yeah, I did. My folks had a little mom and pop motel right on Main Street, and actually, in the '90s, when I was going to high school, the Eastmans were publishing their magazine right across the street from me.
Oh, nice.
And so, yeah, they've kind of been role models, and as far as I'm concerned, sort of the pinnacle of Western big game hunting. And so
Yeah,
it's really been cool to see how much they've grown in that time.
yeah.
From just a journal to I was on their website the other day, and boy, they're doing all sorts of cool stuff.
They
And
are,
not to
man.
mention the videos.
Yeah.
Holy cow!
The hunting
Right?
content, you got Tag Hub, you got the Mule Deer course now, and they've got this family of podcasts, which this podcast is part of, which was super cool for me. I didn't know. I've been subscribing to Eastman's Hunting Magazine for I don't know how long, since I was a teenager, and I started this hunting podcast unknowingly. I did not know that Eastman's did podcasts, and so anyway, kind of cool to see the transformation of all of that.
Yeah, really. But yeah, anyway, I went to school in Thermopolis and went to college in Powell. I met my wife there, and then she and I went to finish school in Laramie at the University of Wyoming. Go Pokes! And got married shortly after college, and ever since then, it's been John and Kate versus the world,
Mm-hmm.
and uh, that's sort of my first act. after college, I got a job as a business manager at a school district on the reservation right outside of Lander here.
Oh, okay.
And it was a really good job, and I was really good at it, Jim. But I hated it from the first day I started work there to the last day. I had in my mind that I need to do something else with my life. That sitting in an office on the nice days and on the cold days just wasn't for me.
Was that the main thing that you didn't like about it? Was kind of being office bound, or what other things made it feel like not a fit for you?
Yeah, that's the biggest one, is just the conformity of the schedule, um, the demand of the type of work, the accounting. Um, I would leave the office on Friday with everything in my mind from the week that I'd just had, and I would spend the whole weekend worrying about what I was going to have to do on Monday. And so I was having a hard time staying connected to the outdoors. And I know some people can do it, but for me, being an outdoorsman is pretty much an everyday thing.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
over the years, I've come to learn that that's not just a sort of a selfish thing. That's an important part of maintaining my mental health, is being able to get outside every day and enjoy nature and take the dog for a walk. And so,
I see you got a pretty handsome pup right now. That black lab.
Yeah, he's really doing good, man. He's actually laying right here beside me.
Is he?
Yeah, I took him out this afternoon just to make sure that he was done for the day when we got on the phone. And yeah, so if you hear snoring, it's not me. It's the puppy.
I think that's funny you say that. I have this old timer. He's a yellow lab. He is 12 and a half years old. And I have a hard time talking about it. He's on his last limb, man, and it's kind of tearing me apart. But this old timer, he used to come in the studio and record with me, but he snores so loud. I was editing the podcast and I can hear him snoring in the background, so I had to kind of kick him out during recording times.
Oh,
I feel terrible.
My first adult dog was a yellow lab I lost about a year ago, and man, when I lost him, I wasn't sure if I even ever wanted to have a dog again.
I know, but that's the thing with them, man. I have. You have to remember when you're going through the bad time with the end of life with your dog. You know, you have to remember the 10, 12, 15, whatever years you had that were good with them, because it is rough. It losing your dog is rough, and I know a lot of people that are going through it right now. You know, my buddy Mike over at Cut Right Mobile, I know he's been going through that, and my buddy Dirk Durham, he just went through that not long ago, and I'm going to be right behind him here with Trev. It's going to be a rough day, I can tell you that much.
Yeah. Well, I feel for you, and hang in there as it happens. It's good and bad how life goes on, and it's sort of not a thing we really talk about. But
yeah, for sure. So for those of you out there listening that have gone through that recently or about to go through it with your dog, man, there's no words that can make that feel better other than it just sucks. It just sucks, and the only thing that heals it is time. And you can go out and replace the dog, but that just makes you feel good about the new dog. It doesn't make you forget the old dog. You know, it's like it just sucks losing your dog. So,
well, you know, I will say, and then we can get back on topic.
Yeah.
That as I was losing my dog, I thought about getting another puppy, and that's what the vet recommended. You know, so old school vets is you get the new one before you lose the old one.
That's what we did.
I thought that would be hard on old Jack, and when I got the puppy, after months of grieving, you know, and played with the puppy, I realized Jack would have loved this dog. That it wouldn't have been a problem at all to have two dogs in the house.
No, I
highly recommend it. Yeah, that's probably a good way to deal with the transition.
Yeah, I think you nailed it, John. The other aspect of that. So I've got Trevor, He's my 12-and-a-half-year-old. But 2 years ago, we got a puppy named Wyatt. We named him Wyatt. He's a golden retriever. And what I noticed was Trevor, about the time we got this pup, he was really slowing down. He wasn't wanting, like, I can't take him hunting anymore. He's got too much arthritis. He's too slow and wears out, but he was really slowing down. Well, we got this puppy. And if it weren't for this puppy, again, his name is Wyatt, I feel like Trevor would be gone by now. But it sparked some extra life into him, and all of a sudden he was playing again. And, it was typical. He was annoyed. There was a puppy around, and he wasn't, the only child anymore kind of thing. But it wasn't... that only lasted for like the first week, and after that, all of a sudden, he fell in love with this puppy as well, and was out playing with him. And they do the tug war thing, and the pup just follows him around everywhere he goes. And it did. I feel like it added some life to my older dog, and But now he's 12 and a half, and that's old for a big dog like Trevor. And he's I feel like I know for sure this is his last winter. If he makes it through. So anyway, sad stuff. You're going to get me on a soapbox talking about my old man, dude. So I want to know a little bit about your attachment to the outdoors. You talked about, you were having a hard time as a business manager for the school district, getting outside and enjoying the outdoors, because it sounds like you're a little bit like me, where you might obsess over work stuff when you're not at work. How did you grow up in terms of the outdoors? Did you grow up hunting? Did you grow up doing photography like you do now and stuff like that? Tell me a little bit about that.
Sure. Well, yeah, I grew up a bird hunter. My dad and uncles and grandpa are all big pheasant hunters. And so we actually didn't have a dog for a period of my childhood, and I felt like I was the bird dog at times. But lots of bird hunting trips, lots of fishing trips. Some of my earliest pictures are out in the outdoors, having my diaper changed on the hood of the truck, and
nice
stringers of fish. And I've been at it my whole life. As when I was sort of a middle school age kid, I had a big dog named Orca that was part Akita, and I would go hiking pretty much every day with that dog. We lived out in the country. We had a big ravine that to a 12-year-old was endless,
Mm-hmm.
And so I grew up outside, looked for arrowheads, and just following the curiosities of nature, kind of like I do now. I think for people that follow my page or look at my page, a lot of what I post about is the things that are on the way to the thing that I'm doing. The little fascinations that I didn't go out looking for, but that became the most interesting part of the day.
Yeah, I could see that. I'm going through your Instagram right now. Just not to sidetrack us, but where'd you take that grizzly bear picture?
You know what? That's up on Union Pass above Du Bois.
God, he's huge, man. Or maybe it's just the angle or something.
No, he's big. That was just out the car window. But it gives me a chill every time I see a grizzly bear.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was at at least 100 yards away off the side of the road. I stopped, took the picture, and kept going without even really causing a gawker's block or anything.
Good. Yeah. Jeez. Yeah. I don't want to run into something like that when I'm hunting.
But yeah, I'm always happy to see those from inside the pickup.
Yeah. That's a good place to see them, man. So hunting wise, did you kind of mold into like big game hunting? What happened with that?
Yeah, so I didn't do that at all growing up. My dad had done it in his youth and kind of got out of it before I was hunting age. And I think for some reason he didn't want to pass that along to me, which is fine. There are people that have hunted and then become non-hunters because of it, just because they don't like to take life.
Yep.
but I got about 30 years old, and everybody around me was doing it, right? And so I'm one of those adult onset big game hunters. I took it up on my own as a solo hunter, and I've been successful with antelope and deer, and not at all with elk.
That's a pretty common story, man. Don't feel bad. Dang elk. Anyway, let me go back to your Instagram here, and then another big topic for me. By the way, what'd you think of the antelope meat?
I love it.
Do you?
Yeah.
Is it pretty good? I have a memory of having antelope meat some odd years ago, and it was terrible. And I just don't know. I don't know if it was the way it was cooked or the way the meat was handled after the kill or what happened there. But I didn't like it, and I haven't hunted one since.
I hear people that say that, and it could be your taste. It can be tough, their muscles are so dense from all that running.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It can be tough, but I think, like with any game, if you process it quickly and correctly, and then prepare each cut correctly, it can be really, really good. One of my favorite things is an antelope rump roast.
Really?
Cooked all day with vegetables and onions, and oh yeah, heck yeah.
Cool, man. I'm now that I live in Montana, I might chase some pronghorn antelope this coming year. But yeah, I just have the other issue with it is they're so far away from where I live. We don't have antelope up here. We just don't. We don't have them in this part of Montana or North Idaho. So it's a hike to get to where they live. And Idaho was a draw tag for them, which is actually pretty easy to. I think everybody draws for it. But I just was like, man, after I tasted that antelope, I don't know, over a decade ago, I am not driving 9 hours to southern Idaho to chase an antelope. But I'll probably change that.
I guess I'll just say it. I sort of feel the same way about mule deer. That
yeah, a lot of people say that.
I've had some mule deer that was just you almost couldn't choke it down, and so it's not my first preference to hunt.
Well, mule deer are, I what I have found is, and what happened is years ago, before he passed away, I had Dr. Valerius Geist on the show, and this is a guy that made a career out of studying this kind of stuff, and he was pretty nutty about mule deer, but mule deer is super dependent on a couple of things: A, time of year, and B, elevations that you kill them at and what they're eating. Like if you're hunting, and again, every time I like have an opinion on the show, I'm going to get some people that totally disagree with what I say, and I expect that. So if you guys are listening and you think I'm full of crap, send me an email, jim@thewesternhuntsman.com. I'm happy to talk about it. But here's what I have found, because I've killed a lot of mule deer. The lower country sagebrush type mule deer taste like crap. I mean, let's just be honest. They just taste like crap. It's pretty sagey tasting. It like for some reason has this. I hate the term gamey, because I think that's a really broad term used by people that don't really understand wild game meat. But it's very sagey, I guess.
Almost astringent.
Yeah,
right?
almost. Yeah,
kind of, almost like a little bit of a creosote.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Creosote, and it's like, especially you could really tell on that type of deer when you cook it in the house, and the smell is like unpleasant. Where you throw elk burger or beef or something on a pan or something in the house, and
raw. Yeah,
and it's really good, but there is something unpleasant. Now, when you contrast that with like a high country mule deer that are eating these the leaves of foliage that are up higher, that have I'm not a scientist, so bear with me, but it has something to do with photosynthesis, and the shorter term of photosynthesis within the vegetation produces like higher sugar amounts in shorter amount of times or something like that. I'd have to go back and listen to this episode.
How interesting.
And so what happens is that vegetation creates mule or the venison, there's no difference between it and like a whitetail, because whitetail always tastes good. It's
Right.
really tough to beat a whitetail. So I guess what I'm saying is, I don't know, was it last year or the year before I got a mule deer, because I've been hunting mainly whitetail, but I did go up with my cousin Andrew and we both tagged down on some mule deer. Man, it was a great tasting buck. It was way up there, high country kind of what I'm describing here. And I took really good care of the meat. You have to get the hide off immediately on a mule deer. Where with a whitetail, and it could be that I usually shoot whitetail around Thanksgiving, so it's usually pretty cold. But shoot, man, I'm not in a rush to get the hide off. Where with a mule deer, you really got to get that hide off. And if you shoot them up in the high country, they just tend to taste a lot better than those lower country muleys, like a Utah muley deer. Again, this is my experience with it, so it's my opinion, but they just do not taste as good as a high country mule deer. Utah or Idaho, or it doesn't matter where. I've never killed a deer in Wyoming, so I can't speak to it. But anyway, hopefully that kind of made sense.
That does. That's very interesting.
Yeah. That's the crazy thing with hunting, man. That's what I love about hunting, is there's all these different concepts that we could break down and, argue and debate and talk about. And you just, the thing is you can't unquestionably prove one of these theories one way or the other. You know what I mean? It's hard to do, but it's always fun to talk about.
A lot of times in the hunting world, it's a story based on an anecdote, someone's experience that it might be 100% true. And so they form knowledge from that experience that they carry with them for the rest of their lives, but there's no way to prove it without the scientific method of testing what they've experienced.
Good point.
It's just an anecdote. And so we all have these anecdotes that are probably true, but unproven.
And that's what mine is. And I've always had the opinion, too, like a late August through mid-October mule deer doesn't taste anywhere near as good as a late October through early November mule deer. And again, that's just an anecdotal thing that I have from my experience. I don't know if that's like, there's consistency with that with other hunters. It's just what I've found. And so, Now, that said, I did kill a really skanky whitetail one time, and it did not taste very good at all. And that was around my birthday, which is November 10th. And he was all sorts of rutted up, super smelly. He was a big buck, probably, 5.5-year-old buck. And he just did not taste that good, man. I don't know why or what happened, but it tasted like he was just full of, hormones or something.
Hormone.
Yeah.
I had wondered with the mule deer too, but the timing where you get the mule deer pretty far before the rut, that doesn't really.
Yeah. In most cases, we have a November mule deer hunt here that goes from like the 1st through the 14th. And I'm, the problem is we're fixing to get snow here in the next couple of days. So I don't know if I'm going to be able to access the areas where they're at, but I'm hoping I can. I didn't lose you, did I?
No, I'm still here. Sorry.
Nope. You're good. You're good, man. So, okay, let's shift gears here because, again, I'm going back to your Instagram, which, by the way, folks, is at the Last Wyomingite. I know we talked about it, but check it out. You have in your kind of description that everybody has on these Instagram pages, Wyoming outdoorsman, modern homesteader, entrepreneur. Let's move to the modern homesteader. Tell me a little, like, how do you define homesteading, and in your mind, what is modern homesteading?
Okay. Well, I guess in my mind, when I say homesteading, that's my wife and I's personal property, our nest egg in our home, and our efforts to have a house, Yeah. I guess when I say modern homesteading, I'm thinking about doing things that are sustainable, being as self-sufficient as possible, but also being a part of a community that's trying to do the same types of homesteading things. I don't have my own chickens, but I can buy local eggs.
Yeah.
I guess a core to my beliefs is whenever there's a task, I ask myself, what's the best way to do this? And sometimes you find that the answer is with a 5,000-year-old tool, and sometimes it feels like the best way to do it hasn't been invented yet.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm always out to answer that question, and we do as many little things as we can to be to live efficient lives and to know where our food came from and what's in it. And
Yeah.
with anything that I guess you would label as homesteading, the question is, can we sustain this? Is it cheaper than the alternative? And is it better than the alternative?
Mm-hmm.
And do we like doing it?
Yeah.
So we keep a big garden. I've got a little property I'm developing now where we've got a second garden going and all sorts of stuff going on that I would kind of roll both into the auspice of homesteading and of entrepreneurship. Those things are pretty closely related.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I love that. I love the concept. John, I think homesteading, to define a homesteader, because everybody has a different definition as to what it is. Homesteading is a mindset. And it's a lot of what you talked about.
Yeah.
Sustainability. Our self-reliance has a lot to do with it. Like, I consider the fact that I'm a hunter and we don't buy very much meat through the year. Well, depending on how good of a year I had. But we don't buy a lot of store-bought meat. We procure that through hunting. We procure veggies through our garden. And as well as some fruits and a lot of the herbs and spices and things like that. My wife grows. She's like the expert with gardening. I'm super dumb with it, but and we do have chickens, but we like, some people wouldn't call us a homesteader because we're not going to get a cow. I've done that and I don't want to do it again, because once you get a cow to milking, man, you have to do it 2-3 times a day. And if you want to, take a vacation and escape the snow and, go to Arizona or something for a week, you're not going to get milk off that cow unless you can count on somebody to come and milk that a few times a day. And that gets costly. So instead, we source that. We trade, because we have 16 chickens, we trade eggs for milk from one of our neighbors who does have a cow. And from that, my wife gets us all the milk that we need, and she makes butter and cheeses and sour creams. I mean, she does all sorts of stuff with this milk. And
cool.
The idea is we are very self-reliant, because if things like were to go south, for example, with supply chains, we're not going to miss out on that kind of stuff because we have it. We know how to procure it. We know how to get it. And that self-reliance is kind of part of the homesteading mindset. And I think that's what being a homesteader is, because there's like extremists out there that act like in order to be a true homesteader, you have to live off grid, and you have to have this many animals and livestock this and livestock that, and honeybees and all this different stuff. Hey, look, if that's your thing, that's awesome. That's great.
That's great.
That's great.
But
let me tell you about the show's newest sponsor, Juniper Mountain Coffee. You can check them out at junipermountaintradingpost.com and check out everything that they sell. I really like what they say on their website. And guys, if you are a coffee connoisseur like me, this here American company that's not run by a bunch of wokesters might be worth checking out for you. What they say is, we roast coffee for those loyal to a lost way of life, those that never back down in the face of adversity, the ones that keep their word, treat people with respect, and still believe in the importance of hard work. We offer some of the best coffee in the world and look forward to earning a spot in your cup. And they have definitely earned a spot in my cup. Whether you like light roast, dark roast, ground already, or not ground, you just want to order it fresh. And they even have those little pod things for those of you that just make one cup at a time. I drink too much coffee for that, so I don't do that. And they also have a cold brew. But it's a great company, great story. You guys are going to dig these guys. Check them out at junipermountaintradingpost.com. Let them know the Western Huntsman sent you. This is that time of year when it's really time to turn up the heat on your scouting. We're going through summer. Season's going to be here before you know it, and I don't care if you're going after mule deer, whitetail, the mighty wapiti, whatever it is. Scouting is imperative, and it makes it much easier when you use trail cameras where they are allowed. And let me tell you something, I like trail cameras that are easy to use, functional, and have good quality pictures. That brings us to Spypoint. Spypoint trail cameras, you can check them out at spypoint.com. And it doesn't matter if you're looking to do one of the cell cams, like the Flex X or the Flex G36 or the LM2. They have some great deals on their website. Like right now, if you check them out, they've got some clearance cameras going on the cell cams. You can also get a cell link that attaches to any regular cell camera and will transmit pictures right to your phone. The other trail cameras, if you're way out in the backcountry and don't have phone service out there, the Force Pro S and the Force Pro are my go-to cameras. I absolutely love them. If you guys saw the pictures from this last bear season, they were really high-quality pictures, and they were all done with that Force Pro camera. So check it out, guys, at spypoint.com, and let them know the Western Huntsman sent ya.
It's almost not possible.
If
you really wanted to do that and go completely self-sufficient, I mean, are you going to grow and grind your own wheat? I
know.
We're all in this together, and so I see the ads on TV from the Wyoming Department of Homeland Security fairly often. They say that everybody in Wyoming should have on stock 2 weeks of supplies in case something were to happen. And that doesn't sound like very much, but
that is not.
It's not, but I would guess that most people aren't there. After going through COVID, I know that most people aren't there.
No.
As that at the very least, we keep a nice, well-stocked pantry and use it. It's basically our grocery store. And it just eliminates that worry and that thought that I could be someone else's problem if there were problems.
Yeah,
so
that's a good mindset. You don't want to be somebody else's problem. I like that. I like that mindset, and I think you nailed it, man. 2 weeks is just not going to cut it, because you will become somebody else's problem after a week. I don't know. Yeah. After going through COVID, we had some level of like prepper. I hate using the term prepper, but we had preparations for things if things were going, a little bit more long term or whatnot, and so we were okay. But think about, like, if it was worse than what COVID was. I recommend you should be able to feed your family with what you have within your house for 90 days at a minimum, without going to a grocery store or ordering, Uber delivery food, or what do they call that? There's some service.
Uber Eats.
Yeah, that one. We don't have that. Yeah.
We don't have those either, but I guess I know what they are.
I travel to big cities sometimes for work, and I can do that, but you have to get like an app and stuff, and so it's kind of a pain. But anyway, the point with that is that's what, like, for me, I recommend a good 90-day stockpile of supplies that your family, and that's going to include food. And after COVID, by golly, have the toilet paper ready. Stuff like that. Just because I feel like there could definitely be something. Imagine if COVID was worse. Imagine if it was like, if you got COVID, it was an absolute no, questions asked death sentence. People would have been a lot more cautious about, going outside and interacting with other people, and it would have been a much bigger deal, and supply chains would have, there wouldn't have been any, you have a, what did they call that, John? The necessary job or
what did they call them?
That phrase, it's so stupid whenever I forget.
Essential
employees, yes. You would not have that if that was worse than COVID. You would not have essential employees still able to deliver groceries from the grocery store, or doing pickup orders at Walmart, stuff like that. And so, that's I think, and you don't have to live on like property or land or anything to have this, but you can find space in your own home to have like a 90-day supply. What say you on that?
Yeah, I say exactly. And that's long before COVID. Sort of my mentality, just in terms of personal finance, has been to identify those things, like paper products and cleaning products that you can get ahead on.
Yeah.
And then I stay ahead on all of those things.
Yeah. It's a wise policy. It's a wise policy indeed. Yeah, paper products, first aid supplies. People don't think about that kind of stuff. First aid supplies, 90 days worth of different various batteries to light your home if power were out, and heat your home. Things like that. Everybody, they like these cosmetic fireplace areas where it's like a natural gas thing. But if supply chains were to go down and that natural gas ran out, how are you going to heat that house? If your furnace or electric, Yeah, and so anyway, those are things I don't know. I could do. I'd love to do a whole podcast on that topic at some point. But what did you mean by the entrepreneur side tying into the homesteading stuff?
Well, just that in terms of it being a personal effort of mine, one of the things I do that I guess I would call homesteading right now is I have a growing tomato garden, a container tomato garden, and I just last week, after ripening tomatoes for the last several weeks, made 32 pints of marinara sauce.
Oh, really?
That it's my own proprietary recipe, Jim, and I'm telling you, it is delicious.
How does a guy way up in Montana get a hold of some of that?
Well, I bet I could ship you some.
Well, I'm not saying for free, unless you want to sponsor the show. That'd be a lot of marinara sauce. No, I'm kidding.
Well, that's where I'm going with this. Is that it started as sort of a personal project of just growing tomatoes as a hobby and as a part of the garden. Mm-hmm. And I've worked on increasing the size of that space every year. I started with 2 containers, and for years I've been adding 2 containers, 4 plants every year. So this year I made 32 pints of sauce, and that sauce is the base for. I couldn't even list all of the meals that I make where that's the key ingredient. Goulash or chili or stuffed peppers, or think of all the things that take a red sauce. Yeah. Spaghetti, yeah. And it's ready to go on the shelf, and it's a homemade product of all my ingredients, all my herbs and spices. And so I've got this little lot that I'm developing, and I'm still in the laying the groundwork stage of it up there. But someday I picture a tomato farm. And with the unpredictability of Wyoming summers, I have worked to grow more and more tomatoes hydroponically. And it's cool, Jim. I'm growing heirloom tomatoes year round.
Really?
That are delicious.
In like a greenhouse? Is that because that hydroponically, whatever word you said there is way out of my vocabulary, brother?
Yeah, well, and what I'm doing is sort of blended hydroponics as just growing a plant just in water and with fertilizer, right?
Okay, I've heard of this. Okay, yes.
And so I tried it with tomatoes last winter, and they're doing great. And I've been experimenting with it. You can clone a tomato plant, get it to grow a bloom, and cut that bloom off and put it in water and start growing it right beside its parent plant. It's been a fascinating study for me, just sort of on a personal level. But someday it'll be a business. I'd really like to think that I'm just, within a couple years, I keep scaling it up, and
that's fantastic.
So that's what I do when I say my homesteading and my entrepreneurial efforts are kind of all tied together.
Anybody that's listened to my show knows that I have this thing where I'm a huge fan of somebody starting something as a dream and building it into their livelihood. And I get really excited about it. In fact, I'm very passionate about entrepreneurship and growing an idea from from just that, an idea, into something tangible like this marinara business. What do you do? Do you like can it or jar it, and it's ready to go?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
how do you sell it? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I'm actually I. This is the first year where I've had enough that I maybe could sell a little bit of it.
Huh.
Um, but it's a process. Tomatoes start ripening, late July,
Mm-hmm.
and so I eat as many as I can. But as they start to ripen, I start to refrigerate them and keep them cool. And as soon as I pretty much, we get to a point in mid October where that's about it. I've still got a few tomatoes on the counter, but I draw the line and say, this is the batch. And then they all have to be blanched. And from there, they go into a stock pot, and I add all the spices and onions and garlic and everything that goes in it. And with a big pot, I think it cooked for I cooked for about 6 hours before I decided it was done. And for anybody that's made spaghetti sauce or marinara, when it's done, it turns into magma.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
it it is dangerous. It ejects it's almost like a Indian paint pot in Yellowstone,
Wow.
and that's when it's done. And from there, it's into it's shelving jars, pint-sized jars. I do a few different sizes for different meals, and then 32 pints took four uh, was four batches in the water bather
Huh.
and everything. Once you water bath it and it seals and cooks that extra little bit, it's pasteurized and it's shelf stable for. I've used it out to about a year. About the time I'm ready to make sauce, I'm running out of sauce, and I've never had any go bad.
Oh, good. Good for you, man. That's
It's
fantastic.
a
Now, hey, what was your pup's name again?
pike,
Pike. So you could do those.
Captain Pike.
You could do a marinara ad where it's Pike trying to sell your recipe like that bean commercial.
All right,
You remember-
the Bush's beans,
Is that
and
one of the
he's not
Bush's
telling
beans? Yeah,
anyone.
yeah. That dog's trying to sell his secret recipe or whatever. Are you gonna call it like the Last Wyomingite marinara sauce kind of thing, or?
Yeah, something like that.
I like it.
Something like that. And like I said, I've got a bunch of irons in the fire, and um,
That's beautiful.
hopefully most of them will work under this auspice of the Last Wyomingite.
Yeah,
Um,
just kind of keep it all that brand and that image and the idea of there's something really authentic about something, a product coming from Wyoming for some reason. When you drive into Wyoming, they've got there's always that sign that says like "Welcome to Wyoming, Forever West," and it's got the guy on the buck and bronc with the mountains in the background. There's something really
yeah,
nostalgic about that, and I feel like you could build a hell of a brand with something like that, and I love it, man. This is beautiful stuff. I love the idea of doing what you're doing and creating it into or I'm sorry, turning it into some kind of livelihood for you. I think that's fantastic.
I appreciate that you're receptive to it.
Oh,
Part of
totally,
doing what
yeah.
I've been doing the last few years is hard for people to understand. I quit my job and I flipped my economic model to where I've had this notion that instead of trying to go out and have a job where you make $100,000, maybe you can do 10 things that make $10,000, or one
Mm-hmm.
something that saves you $10,000 a year is the same as making $10,000 a year.
Yeah,
And
true.
so I live a kind of an austere life, and I count towards my the economic contribution all of the costs that I don't have by having a career like that. I don't have to buy suits, and we save so much just in food and groceries by having someone home to take care of the homestead on a daily basis.
Oh, absolutely. Do you so do you not have a day job now?
I don't right now.
That's
I
fantastic.
well, I've done being able to not have a day job has caused me to have to do some harder part-time jobs, and I've got a little wood shop that generates some income.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And you sell custom prints with your photography stuff, right?
Well, yeah, I try to. They're definitely available if anybody wants to check out that page and sees something they like. I can always do a print. That hasn't taken off like I would hoped it would. Honestly, there are so many good photographers out there.
Yeah, I feel
Um,
like I could see that being super, competitive or whatnot. But it's still there's got to be some. I am not a photographer, man, but there's got to be. I'm just looking through your Instagram here. Something very satisfying about producing something like that. I would totally consider buying this print that you. I don't know if you have it as a print, but it's a rooster, a pheasant. Um, I too, like you, grew up hunting pheasants, and we did big game as well, but we were big time pheasant hunters, and the country just kind of went to hell with where we'd hunt pheasants. Everything turned to they got rid of the ditches and put in underground water lines, and so the habitat
yeah,
just kind of went away. Where we'd go out and be tagged out on our two bird limit by 9 a.m. Man, you'd work for an entire Saturday and Sunday, and maybe somebody in your group might see one, and might have gotten one, and so I just I stopped. Um,
I can.
it, yeah, it sucks.
It, it's kind of like that around here too. It's just when I was a kid, all the farmers would let you hunt, and now it's hard to know who owns the farms, even in a lot of
Yeah,
cases.
yeah, yeah. Well, a lot of them are corporate owned.
So,
They're these firms that they're not even they're operated out of state. And I don't know. I don't know how I feel about this corporate farming thing. But
but that's a good topic.
yeah, let's talk about it, man. That
Um,
but like what is that? And I want to talk about this corporate farming thing, how it relates to life in Wyoming. Specifically, because I know, and actually, I don't want to say I know. I I have been made aware, and I have not confirmed, that it is a big problem in Wyoming. There's not a lot of local farmers left. It's mostly these big corporate farms that buy up these big chunks of land and turn them into corporate farms. And how does that relate to, like, corner crossing issues, which is a big deal in Wyoming?
yeah. Well, I the first thing is that when corporate farms come in, it means that a lot of local hunters lose their rights to hunt those lands.
Mm-hmm.
And I know there's a really big corporation that has bought most of Albany County down in southeast Wyoming. And I've got friends down there that have hunted there for generations, had relationships with landowners, and now they just can't. Or at the very least, they had access to the road that got them to the public land, and now there's a chain over the road.
Mm.
Um, the corner crossing uh, is it's a good subject because I think for a lot of native Wyomings, it's something we took for granted until this lawsuit came up. That
What do you
it's
mean?
something.
What do you mean you guys took for granted?
Well, it's something that in a lot of places, I guess, especially as a bird hunter, out hunting chuckers and huns in open country,
Mm-hmm.
um, a lot of times private land's not fenced. And
Yeah.
so these corners that we're talking about, you're going from unfenced public land into private land, back into unfenced public land without any kind of demarcation of it. And so in the past, landowners, I don't think would have ever thought anything of it to know that someone was passing through a corner. But when you have a corporation that's in charge and ranch hands that have very specific orders about, who's allowed where, and a lot of times, they're a part of it is that they're hiring outfitters to take people on hunts on their private land, and so they don't want you anywhere near their elk herds or their deer herds.
So they're just for
Well,
clarification, so the corporate farms will basically they do the farming operation, and then they turn around, they like lease hunting privileges or whatever. Sorry, I got distracted there. Hunting to kind of supplement their income, kind of thing.
Yeah. But the case down by Elk Mountain that's gotten the national attention, it was actually a fenced section of land, and they got out a ladder and climbed across the corner. And our state court said that is not trespassing, and so everybody cheered. And the landowners have hired. I just read the other day a big high-powered law firm out of Washington D.C., and they're appealing it to the U.S. Circuit Court
in favor of the landowners or the hunters.
The hunters won the original case.
I know. Yes,
and they
yes.
said,
and so
right.
the landowners are appealing that to the Supreme Court or whatever.
Yeah, basically.
Gotcha. See, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and it'll go through the circuit court before it goes to the Supreme Court. But okay. Yeah, they are appealing it.
What do you think? Like, when you think of that, and you think of, it's almost like cartoon-like when you think of these, these rich, evil landowner owners sitting in a dark room. They're like, you know what? We're going to stop these hunters from corner crossing, and we're going to hire the best law firm, from the East Coast or whatever. Like, why do they do that? What is their motivation? Is it to protect the hunting access that they could lease out to people to add supplemental income to the ranching operation?
That's a part of it.
Is it?
Huh. Yeah, and I think just having blinders on, that no trespassing means no trespassing. You said it's sort of cartoonish, and the image that it harkens for me is that in Wyoming's earliest days as a territory and as a state, the most powerful group in the state, and arguably it is to this day to some extent, was the Wyoming Stock Growers Association.
Yep.
And
cattlemen associations, those kind of things. Yep.
Yeah. The late 1800s, we had all sorts of land get bought up by people in Europe. And that's kind of what led to the Johnson County War, was conflicts between cattlemen and these big land conglomerations and local people that were getting shut off of kept away from their creeks and run off of their own land. And
oh, wow.
So this whole thing to me sort of harkens to that Old West. I don't know if you watched the drama 1883.
I did, yeah.
With Tim McGraw.
Yeah.
But there's a scene in that where a couple of guys from the Stock Growers Association, when they're camped in Wyoming, come up and try to basically run them off.
Mm-hmm. Yep,
and they tell them, we don't have any more right to this land than we do. And that's kind of still the story today.
It's such a fine line with, because I think about that kind of stuff, John. I'm a landowner. I'm not some giant corporate farm raising, alfalfa or whatever. But I have this weird disconnect between what it means to be a landowner and protecting that because I believe in land ownership. And so I don't want anybody to get me wrong. Land ownership, if you own that land, it is important that they have that, right to the boundary they've created, right? Private property rights, everything. But on the other token, when you flip that coin, before I owned land, and my wife would tell you, I used to get really, really upset about landowners landlocking us out of public land or, putting no. I used to get. I tell you where it was worse was in North Carolina, because they don't have a lot of public land in North Carolina. When I was stationed out there in the Marines, And I just tell my buddies, no, grab your deer rifle. We'll go out. I'm going to teach you how to hunt deer, and we're going to go chase these little North Carolina whitetail. And man, everywhere we went, there was nothing but no trespassing signs. We saw more no trespassing signs than we saw deer. And so I'm like one of those guys that falls in between. I had that Matt Ranella on my show, Steve Ranella's brother, who's like, he's got this almost socialistic ideology about it, where he's like, oh, I have trespassers feel welcome on my land, or whatever he put. I'm not like that by any means, but there is this almost sense I get of the people that have a problem with corner crossing. There's this sense of evil in my mind that comes out of that. Like, you got to be kidding me. These two corners come together. Now, I've been to the four corners where New Mexico and Arizona and Utah and Colorado come together, right? Mm-hmm. I've been there, and it's you could stand in two states at once. It's not like these are big fat lines and you're trespassing. So when you think about this grid system, this gridded private land system in places like Wyoming, and there's parts of Montana, and I believe there's even some in southeast Idaho. I could be wrong on that, and other western states. To think that there's somebody that sits in a room somewhere and has a problem with somebody crossing over this imaginary line. I mean, it's
the most ticky-tacky,
it's so
legal
bizarre.
argument.
Yeah, tacky is a great way to put it, man. Great way to put it.
Yeah, and that's kind of one issue, and being fenced off of private lands in a lot of places is sort of another issue that you got to understand that in a lot of places that we're talking about in Wyoming, the landowners are leasing the public land. Mm-hmm. They're running their cattle on it all summer, and they're taking care of the fences. And whether it's a state road or a private road, they're taking care of the road. And so they feel an ownership of the public land that you can kind of understand, right? And as hunters, we know that there are bad actors that give us all bad reputations. And there are so many hunters out there now that basically every landowner has had bad experiences with hunters. And so that's what you're facing, when you want to drive through someone's land or they cut across a corner. A lot of times is they don't want you to go back there and litter or tear up their road
or shoot their barn or leave gates open.
Shoot their barn.
You went right into the question I was going to ask you, which is how much of liability / responsibility is on hunters' shoulders for some of the past bad apples that have done that. And I've experienced that. Like my grandparents on one side of the family here has all these alfalfa ranches in central Utah, and I remember Grandpa he never had a problem with people hunting geese and hunting pheasants and whatnot on his land. He didn't like them hunting deer because he wanted to hunt deer. But anyway, it was this thing, and I grew up and I had all these access to the neighboring farms and ranches around there when I was a kid. Nobody cared, everybody kind of knew each other, and I'd go hunt deer or pheasants or whatever on these neighboring properties. And then one time I just gotten out of the Marines, and I didn't know anything had changed, man. I go down there, and I'm hunting pheasants, and I drive down to this spot that had a spigot where you can fill up drinkable water down by this old, I don't know even how to describe that. It's like a place where they would corral sheep and cattle and also bring all this alfalfa back and bale it up and stack it and whatnot. Anyway, I go down there, and I didn't know anything had changed. And I'm like filling up water, and I get back in my truck, and all of a sudden this other truck pulls up, and I'll never forget this guy, man. He just rubbed me the wrong way, especially because I was so ornery. That first year I got out of the military, it was such a crazy time in my life.
Oh, I bet.
Man, he pulls up, and he's like this big fat son of a bitch, and he rolls his window down and just looks at me. And I rolled my window down. I'm waiting for him to say something like, how you doing, or what are you doing here, or something. And he just looks at me and kind of gives me this dirty look. And you can imagine a Marine that just came home from Iraq was in no mood for some douchebag to give me a hard time, right? And finally I said, "Are you going to say something, pork chop, or do I need to get out and smack those lips right off of your face?" I said something real obnoxious like that. And man, his jaw about fell out of the truck. He just couldn't believe somebody had just talked to him like that. But what had happened is that landowner had leased that property to some outfit that built these cabins and like leased the land out to pheasant hunters, and they raised pheasants and released them on there. And I was blown away. I didn't know they had done this. I'd been gone for 5 years, And so we worked it out, ended up being kind of buddies after that. But initially I was so mad at this guy for not saying something to me. And anyway, and by the way, John, that worked out great because those hunters, they'd raise that outfitter. They would raise all these pheasants. The hunters would chase them onto my dad's place, and I'd just sit over there and wait for them and shoot them. So
Perfect.
pretty nice little situation. What do you think the future holds with this corner crossing thing, man?
Boy, if we assume the decision will be the same at the higher courts, then I guess what we can hope for is the state to codify that right, and then ideally put in accesses in some of these places.
Like that ladder system that those guys used.
Yeah. If it's going to be a permanent place of public access, then that's kind of what makes sense to me, is to develop it a little bit, and that's really what I hope. That's really what I hope happens. I think the repercussions of them reversing that decision are probably will have some unintended consequences. There are a lot of people that have bought private land adjacent to pieces of public land because of that adjacency, thinking that we border public land, and now if they can't corner cross onto that public land, what happens to the value of their property?
But would the opposite be true too? Not to make an argument for these landowners, but would the opposite of that be true? Hey, buy this land because nobody else can access it but you. So like our property in Idaho, that we just got to a point where we're about to close on it and sell it. Which I'm like kind of slightly butthurt over. I really love this property, but anyway, it's 26 acres and it butts up to what is called a Vista land. A Vista is a large energy company up here. It's like the power. When you pay your power bill, you're paying it to a Vista, right? And so a Vista built these dams on the Clark Fork River, and as part of their ability to have these dams to generate electricity on the Clark Fork River, they have to own certain amounts of publicly accessible land against the river, and my property butted up against like 300 acres of Avista land. So it was cool because I owned 26 acres, but man, I had access to all this acreage right behind me, and I killed a giant whitetail last year on it. Not giant, but he was my biggest whitetail. And I was wearing snowshoes and sauced him with my bow. It was the coolest story ever. I felt like a real, mountain man or something. But anyway, that was one of the things that as we advertised it when we were selling it, was, hey, you have, because of the way the highway goes and, how our property lines up, you have all this access, and it's almost exclusive to you. If you own this land, and it was. Now, by law, and what was nice is anybody could pull up on the highway and just park, and all they'd have to do is kind of walk through this little gate or whatever, And they can hike, it's about a mile, 2 miles around to the backside of that property, and they can access it. And by law, that was totally legal. Totally legal. Now, the one little secret that I'm hesitant to even share with people is, for me, who is I am a wildly fanatical public land advocate, and I've argued with many politicians on this show about public land and public land access, and I'm a huge believer in it. But even me, I would get slightly annoyed if somebody actually made the effort to park on the highway and hike into what I considered my exclusive access to this Avista land. You know what I mean? And I'm just being honest. It was annoying, and even though legally they were fully within their right. And so I guess that was a long way of asking what you were just saying. Would the opposite effect be true if they could claim, like, let's say the circuit courts say, yeah, no, people cannot publicly access this land, this corner crossing is trespassing, and now they could say, oh, you have exclusive access.
All the public land. Boy, what a horrible outcome that would be.
It would be.
Because it would essentially make that all private land. And we have a lot of that now. We have so much landlocked land in this checkerboard grid of public land that is Wyoming.
Yeah, and it's not just Wyoming, John. I mean, we have all this landlocked all across the West, where it's just strategically owned, privately owned land that blocks out millions upon millions of acres of public land that should be accessible. And I don't know what the solution is to that.
Well, I think the solution is for us to keep supporting our local conservation organizations, and just pushing for more and more access through the game and fish. And if we can fund projects to provide access, I think they'll do it for us in most cases. There have been some good and some bad land swaps in Wyoming in the last few years. Mm-hmm. To try to address that, to open up some public access, and unfortunately, in the hunting world, I think a lot of things come down to how you choose to spend your money, where you choose to spend your money, and
yeah,
I think it's a fight worth fighting, though, for sure.
I think so too. Spend your money on public access and John Law's marinara sauce, and you'll be in good shape, right? No, yeah. Going back to what you just said there, John, are you okay on time, man? Am I keeping you too long?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay.
I'm good.
Going back to what you just said, supporting some of these conservation organizations and getting involved with some of those, the access. Let me back up. What is your thought? What are your thoughts on some of these private entities that are coming in as, sometimes they're forming as like nonprofits, sometimes they're forming as like a for-profit for the sole purpose of buying privately owned land and making it publicly accessible, whether it's through like membership programs, like let's say there's this organization that you've got like this landlocked area where maybe in the middle of all this landlocked area is like, I don't know, a few thousand acres of really good elk habitat, and the elk there's a herd up there, and it's a sizable herd, and one of the access points of privately owned land maybe came up for sale for $1 million, and let's say that's I don't know, 1,000-acre ranch or a 200-acre ranch, whatever. I'm just I'm spitballing here, and a privately held company came in, or a not-for-profit, a not-for-profit. Geez, man, I'm sorry, I'm stuttering here.
You're kind of talking about like some of the things like the Nature Conservancy has done.
Yeah, and where they buy this land with the sole purpose of giving people access to that landlocked land, or just access to that private land. But a lot, like some of them are going to be like, okay, we bought this 1,000 acres, and for $100 a year, you can access this private land, or maybe it's just there was another one. I was talking to a guy down in Texas where he's like, no, we're just going to buy the land and we're just gonna make it publicly accessible, and there is no we need people to pay. We need everybody that believes in this kind of program to pay like $3 a month or something, and if we get enough of those people paying that much money, they've got plenty of money to buy all these public or private lands and turn them into public. What are your thoughts?
But it seems like a step in the right direction to me. I mean, I think any increased public access is probably good, and whether that's through the form of charging a trespass fee to go through some of these private lands, or any time it's not truly public, and so then the future is uncertain with any program like that. But that seems like a step in the right direction to me. What say you about that?
I think it could be dangerous, but for the most part, I think it is the step in the right direction. I think that it is. If there is one thing that as Western big game hunters that we know, because I say it in that sense, because if you look at the East Coast, like I told you, I lived in North Carolina, private land everywhere. I mean, there's hardly any public land. You look at the Midwest, it's mostly privately held land. But out here in the West, we have these massive, publicly accessible wilderness and Forest Service lands and BLM lands and accessible lands where we can go out. And the thing that I like about it is we are the stakeholders in this land. So we care if it's actually good habitat for elk, because that's why we're accessing it. We're not PETA. This isn't PETA that has no real stakeholder stake in the game. Sorry to repeat that word, but hunters are tangible, real stakeholders in something that they value deeply. No other group has that when it comes to public land. And so it seems to me that it would make a lot of sense if hunters could, for the love of God, once in their life, come together on one issue and unite and go after something. It would be access to these lands where the game that we are passionate about pursuing live. That's my take on it. I don't know anything else to add to that. What do you think?
I think that's a great thought. I'm trying to think of if there is a nonprofit out there that has that as their mission. It seems like there should be.
Well, there's been a couple. There's been a couple that have started. It's very, very difficult what I'm finding. In fact, I was going to be a board member of one. And the guy just was not setting this thing up right. It wasn't getting organized appropriately. You got to be really careful, because what happens in, the nature of taking donated money from the general public and trying to put it towards a public good, is very emotional, and it's a very touchy subject, and so it's like, I subscribe to Netflix, for example. What does that cost? $5 or $10 a month or something like that. Hey, no big deal. Yeah. Whatever. They take one of my favorite shows off of there. I'm pissed for 10 minutes and then I move on with my life. But by golly, $3 a month, and you live in Idaho, and this organization takes your $3 a month and invests in public access in Wyoming. That's not beneficial to this Idaho guy, and now these people are in an uproar. And so I think that it has to be some... The hunters that would get involved in something like that would have to be extremely patient and understanding with how that money is managed. Not from a sense of what dollars are being used for what, but in a sense of this might not benefit you in the next 2 or 3 years, but it might in 5 or 10 years. And so that's where you have to I think use caution, and there has to be perfect clarity from a sense of if you're asking somebody to pay $3 a month to help public access. There just has to be a perfect clarity as to how things progress and what lands are accessible now, and maybe give the people that are donating that money the first right of refusal to access that land over people that don't, if that makes sense. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I have a lot of opinions without a lot of data to back it up, brother. So, well, man, I've kept you a long time, man. I really enjoyed this conversation. We might have to do this again, man.
Well, yeah, I've had fun. I took a handful of notes about all the things I thought we would talk about, and we didn't really get to any of them.
I know. I'm sorry. We talked about hunting etiquette. We talked about ethics.
No.
Or we were supposed to, and all we did was talk about this corner crossing thing for what we you know. And do you have anything you'd like to add in terms of the hunting etiquette side of things? Because I like to talk about that while it's actively hunting season. And what's today? October
23rd while we're talking.
23rd. Yeah. So it's the 23rd. You know, there's all hunting seasons for the most part are out. Me and my girls were out last night looking for elk and deer and bear and everything else. It's all open right now. There's been a lot of etiquette issues that have popped up. So I'm curious if you had something etiquette wise, and I think a lot of people get confused. Just so we're clear here, there's a difference between hunting ethics and hunting etiquette. And what I'm referring to is etiquette, how we treat other hunters on the mountain, how we respond to other hunters on the mountain, that kind of thing. What do you see out there, John, etiquette wise? Because I don't want to tell you we were going to talk about one thing and then we totally went off the rails and talked about homesteading.
Oh, no. Well, no, I think I'm the one that got us off on the marinara discussion.
Yeah, no, and I love that stuff, and that's usually how my show goes, man. I make all these big, grand plans to have a certain discussion, but let's talk about hunting etiquette. If you have another 10 minutes or so.
You know what I would say is be friendly out there. Stop and when you're at the trailhead or the parking lot, talk to the guys that are there and find out what they're doing so you don't step on their feet.
Can we go into detail with that? Can we talk about that exact thing right there? Because when you say talk to somebody about what their plans are, like I'll give you an example. If I meet up with, I usually go to when I'm going hunting, I'll have plan A through like D, E, F, or G, right? And if I get to plan A and there's a truck there and the people are there, I will get out and I'll ask, hey, are you guys going this way or are you going that way? And the reason I'm asking is because I don't want to step on your toes. And that usually,
exactly. That's exactly what I'm saying.
Okay, that's what you're saying. And a little secret with that, guys, for everybody listening, I've met a lot of good friends by doing that. So anyway, I didn't mean to cut you off with that, John.
By taking the time to be friendly in the parking lot, you get all sorts of great information too, right? The people
Absolutely.
that have been up there for a week and are just coming out successful or unsuccessful. But yeah, mainly just to make sure that you're not following someone's tracks right up the mountain. Or if they're looping one way, you're not going to loop directly into the other direction. Wyoming is vast enough. I try to avoid the people. If I see a truck somewhere, I a lot of times just go somewhere else.
Man, that is actually I don't want to glaze right over what you just said there. There is a lot to be said about just moving on, and this is why you don't go into the field with only a plan A. You have B, C, D, E, F. Moving on from when there is a truck parked there already, they beat you to it, early bird gets the worm, whatever. It can be irritating, right? I mean, let's not deny that it can be irritating.
If that's a honey hole,
Yeah.
You get used to a spot year after year, and you come back one year and someone's on it.
Yeah.
You think that's my spot.
And the thing is it's way less irritating if you have a plan B, C, D, and E, and F, and whatever.
Yeah.
I can't even say the alphabet. So, yeah, I like that concept, man. If I'm like you, if there's a truck, I'm moving on. Do you, when you're going hunting, do you target actual, like, you know how they have these trailhead areas where there's parking lots and sometimes there's even like a porta-john or something right there, and then everybody's kind of walking in the same trail? I never hunt those. What do you hunt those?
No, I try not to.
I like to find like random ass spots where nobody thinks about walking in. What do you do? What are you targeting?
Well, I bird hunt a lot, and so it's wide open out there. And I look for new places. I like to take big drives, Jim. That's one of my favorite pastimes, is to just spend a day on dirt roads, finding new spots.
Oh, we get along, man. I love it. Yeah.
I'm sorry. What was your question?
Oh, I said we'd get along because I like the long drives too. So yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I lost my train of thought.
No, that's okay. So we were talking about, you like to go on long drives to find new areas, and versus like hitting those trailhead kind of areas where there's 4 trucks parked, 2 of them have horse trailers, and maybe one has an ATV trailer or something. So people are up there. I never hunt those. I never go there ever. I think it's crazy.
No, and I see we've got what we call the loop road, kind of on our local mountain here, and it turns into a city when General Elk opens. And I wonder, do these people know each other, or are they just are they forming neighborhoods up there?
Really?
But no, I try to avoid the people, and when I do run into people, like I said, I just chat them up and see what they're doing. And
man, I'll tell you a funny little story. There's this area I hunt in Idaho for elk season, and I had been hunting this same kind of general drainage, or I guess series of drainages. I don't know, John, have you ever been to North Idaho?
Yeah, just kind of passing through, but yeah.
Okay,
I've been on the Montana side more, but.
So you've seen like the way that these canopied forests are. It's like a damn jungle up here. And so, anyways, these spots that you find, you can stare at your Onyx or your Spartan Forge or whatever all day long, right? But it all looks the same in North Idaho, and so you have to get boots on the ground to really determine what is in that area, and what, like, where are the elk feeding, where are the meadows at, where are the north face benches, all this stuff. Anyway, I had found one of these areas, and I'd had some success up there in terms of elk action, elk encounters, whatever. A couple years go by, and I go up there. And so what this was there's this dirt road that goes up the mountain, and then there's it forked off to the left and would go down to, I don't want to call it a trailhead because it's not really a trailhead. It's just this dirt road would go down to kind of this meadow area on the river. And I think it was put in there for fly fishing access because one of the tributaries to the main river kind of fed through there, and I've hiked up that and fished it. Great fishing, and I think that's why this area was down there. But anyway, I'd go park back there, and I'd hike up there from there. One year I show up, and there's like this city of wall tents all over this place, it kind of where the parking area was, that had never been there before. You're talking about a unit where if you find an area, you this was back in the day when it was not overrun. During archery season, you'd be the only one on the mountain. So I go over there, and it's all these Mennonite. The Mennonites.
Yeah.
So these Mennonites are over there, and they're camped. And Mennonites, I don't know how to for people that are listening that don't know what Mennonites are. I am not going to define who they are because I don't really know. But they're this religion, and it's like similar to Amish, but they'll live more modern. Anyway, I don't know how to. They're actually really good people. I've had a lot of really good interactions with them. But I was livid, man. I was livid that these people, there was like 7 wall tents. There was a couple of fifth wheels, this giant camp, and they had to be making a bunch of noise. And so like a week goes by, and I go check, and they're still camped there. And so I'm like, okay, well, this sucks. So I go elsewhere, and then a week goes by, and I go check again. They're still camped there. Man, they were there all September. Finally, I'm walking down way up above from where they camped. I had made this plan to kind of go over the mountain instead of going from down low. And I'm walking down the mountain, and I hit the dirt road, and I have like 2 miles once I hit the dirt road back to my truck. I'd kind of come out on the wrong end, made a mistake, had this long ass hike. And so I'm walking down the dirt road. It's like 10 o'clock at night. This pickup truck comes rolling down the road, and they offered me a ride. And I'm like, you know what? I'm exhausted. Yeah, I'll jump in the back seat if you guys are good with it. I'm just parked down here about 2 miles or whatever. Turns out, John, it was one of the dudes parked at this Mennonite camp, and they ended up being some of the coolest dudes I've ever met. And they're telling me these wild stories about, oh man, so-and-so shot a spike over here yesterday, and 5 days ago, so-and-so got a 5-point up here. These guys were super fired up and passionate about elk hunting. And I'm like cruising down the road. We're having just this great conversation. They get me to my truck. Ever since then, they've camped in the same exact spot, and it's the same big-ass group. And I always have a great conversation with them. I go over there, and they've given me breakfast. They've, offered me coffee, and now we know each other, and we have like this relationship. And I've given them rides. I've seen them come off the mountain, and I'll be driving up the road, and like, come on, guys, jump in, and I'll take them back to camp or whatever. So it's just, I think the lesson with this is, I was like fighting mad when I first saw this camp, but I ended up becoming really good friends with these folks, and I actually got a lot of good intel about what the elk were doing with them. Yeah. And it's worked out wonders for me. And so that just the respect, what were you going to say there?
We're all out doing the same thing, the same kinds of things, And so, yeah, it's when you talk to people and realize that, you become more accepting of it being their public land too.
Yeah. No, I love that. I love that idea, because we are. I know that there's the flat brimmed hat gang out there that that likes to wear the "I'm a public landowner" tee or whatever. But the idea is we all are public landowners, and we all are out there on the same side. It's not like you're out there competing for hunting ground with PETA that want to take away your lifestyle. You know what I mean? And so there does need to be where I can make a joke about my fellow hunters for wearing flat brimmed hats. I still love them, right? Right. And I still want to be their friend, and I want to share this land and this lifestyle and this passion. So that our future generations have something to hold on to. It's important stuff, man.
It really is. And I'll add that in a world that seems ever more divided, it's nice to look at the hunting community as a whole and realize that it's not partisan, and that we have our disagreements, but that we all, at the end of the day, still share a love for the land and the animals, you know?
Yep. Exactly. Well, John, this has been a great conversation, man. Like I told you earlier, I think people are going to get a lot. I love getting people that I don't know on the show and getting perspectives that are not like widely known. Everybody knows where people like Steve Ranella stands, right? And I like the guy too, but everybody knows where all these big names stand. And we've all heard their opinions. It's people like you that have this experience growing up and hunting in Wyoming their whole life, that I love to get on to gain perspectives that we wouldn't get elsewhere. And I think this is what's going to move the needle down the road, man. I guess that's a long way of me telling you I really appreciate you coming on the show. I know I kind of hit you up out of the blue and was like, hey, man, want to come on my pod? Hey, was this your first podcast, by the way?
Yeah. This is the first time I've gotten to sit down and kind of talk about what I'm all about. And
Heck yeah, man! Now you're a pro.
It's been cool. I've had fun, man. If you ever want to talk again, I'm here for it. And I tell you what, catching up on your podcast, I thought, boy, I would have liked to have been in the studio with those guys. And if you ever feel like doing some sort of a panel or having more than one guest on, and want somebody that can sort of offer an alternative perspective, I'm down for it.
Yeah, well, that's good to know, man, because we do the hunting panels all winter long. This is the winter time is where we address some of the major hunting issues that we face as we look into the future of hunting. And so we spend a lot of time that time of year for those hunt. I love doing the hunt panels. There's a trick to those though. You gotta keep them limited. I've been on some podcasts where the hunt panel there's like 6 people and nobody actually gets to chime in. I found if I get 2 or 3 people on the show for these hunt panels, we can really hash out some real solutions and that people will benefit from. So I'd love to get you back on for one. I actually have one in mind. We'll talk about it after this hunting season's over.
Yeah, that would be great. I'd really like that.
Good deal. Well, tell everybody where they can find you on social media and stuff.
Sure thing, Jim. That is the Last Wyomingite, and that's all one word. But if you type it out separately, I think it'll come up. I'm pretty easy to find online. My main thing is of course the Instagram is where I sort of keep a daily photo journal of what I'm up to. And I think on that note, if I could take a second, Jim, and just thank everybody that has supported that page, friends and family and people around the state. I've got a really cool audience on there, and maybe it doesn't come through with the posts, but it leads to a lot of good discussion too. And I've got a lot of non-hunters that follow me on social media, and I think they're learning a lot. And I've got a lot of, sort of dyed-in-the-wool local hunters that maybe don't appreciate the non-hunting perspective that I hope are learning something too as they go along. So I just want to thank everybody that's given me that follow or has ever liked a post or scrolled a post. I'm really having a good time with it. And I really appreciate having the chance to sit down and talk with you tonight.
Heck yeah, man. What I like about your page with what you're talking about, the non-hunters that are following you on there is, John, sincerely, you're a good representation of what hunters are today and why we're passionate about what we do. And that makes my heart pretty happy, man, that you have a lot of non-hunters on there, because we need more people out there like you that are representing hunting with that do it in this way where you're showing people that are non-hunters that hunters are very respectful and appreciative of our life and our wildlife. And we have this profound respect for our wildlife, and yet we still hunt. And that is like the great conundrum that non-hunters sometimes don't understand. And so I'm glad you're out there representing that and helping shed some light for those non-hunters, because those non-hunters are the people that we really need to focus on if we expect to have a future as hunters. So I appreciate you doing that. Stick on the line for after we end this, but I appreciate you joining me on the show, man. This was a great conversation. I'm definitely going to keep in touch with you, and we're going to get you back on in the future for sure.
Great. Well, thanks again, Jim.
You made it. That's the end of the episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please make sure you're following us on Instagram @TheWesternHuntsman and write us a good review at Apple Podcasts. Thanks, guys. See you next time. Stay Western, and I'll see you on the mountain.